Convex grind, Sabre grind, hollow grind, Scandinavian grind. Hey, welcome everyone. Hey, this is the Virginia Bushcrafter. Once again, thank you for taking some time out of your day to come and spend some time with me to talk about some bushcrafting items. If this is your first time here, this channel is strictly about learning and practicing the skills of bushcrafting, prepping, and survival for the wilderness. Again, that is bushcrafting, prepping, and survival for the wilderness. So guys, first of all, go ahead, hit that like button so that YouTube will know that you like my content. Leave a comment, positive or negative, because that's one of the ways that we learn. Share this video out to any and everyone, and hit that bell so that you can get all of my notifications when a video drops. Ultimately, subscribe to my channel. So guys, again, here's one of the greatest joys is bushcrafting, because there is no end to bushcrafting. Bushcrafting, prepping, and survival for the wilderness says it all. There's so many skills to learn, but then you have to hone in on certain skills. I want to talk about something I have spoken on before, but I want to speak about it more in depth. We all know there are the 10 C's, the cutting tools. So that can be an axe, knife, or saw, or hatchet. But in particular, what I want to speak about, I see that a lot of people ask about the grind. What is the difference between the edges? There is a convex edge. There is a saber grind edge. There is a hollow ground edge. There is a Scandinavian grind edge. There's a full flat grind edge. There's a chisel edge, so on and so on and so on. So what I want to speak on is the grinds that I have used, that I have experience with, which are the convex grind, the saber grind, the hollow grind, and the Scandinavian grind. So I'm only going to speak on grinds that I have experience with. So stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, guys. The very first grind that I want to speak on today, and again, these are grinds that I have experienced with. Again, there are many others, but I want to be very transparent and speak on only the grinds that I have used. Now, the very first one is a convex grind. It is also known as the axe grind. So here is a convex grind. Now, the first way to determine a convex grind is by looking at the cheeks. You will notice that the cheeks curve outward. If you notice here, starting from the edge, they curve outward in a smooth arc. You can look at it from the top. You'll notice how it's smooth, how it gets wider, like an arc. So that's one of the characteristics of a convex grind. Just think like a lens or a very blunt V. Again, if you look at it, again, the cheeks curve outward. And let's try to look at this as a V. You notice the edge is just solid steel. And this edge is extremely strong. Very strong edge right here. And this is excellent for chopping and splitting wood. So when you are chopping, you are essentially breaking fibers. And when you are splitting, you are actually splitting the fibers. This also has great edge retention because of all of this steel. Very good blade edge retention. Now, one thing about this convex grind that is somewhat difficult to sharpen without the proper tools. I use a strop and a Lasky poke. If you look at some of my previous videos, I've demonstrated the Lasky poke. But and it's not really razor sharp as other grinds like a hollow grind or a Scandinavian grind, because this is just very strong here. And again, you want that beefy edge when you're chopping, when you're breaking fibers. So again, this is the convex grind. Again, you can really determine the convex grind once again by the curve outward of the cheeks. See where it starts very thin and it curves outward. And it just again, think of a V or a lens or something of that nature. This is the convex grind that its main purpose is used for chopping and splitting. Is great for building a shelter. Again, it's somewhat difficult to sharpen unless you have the proper tools. I prefer the Lasky poke and a strop. Those are the two items I prefer. So again, this does have a sharp edge, but I prefer not to have my edge on an axe or a hatchet so sharp that it cuts paper. It's not as sharp as a hollow grind or a Scandinavian grind or a Sabre grind, which you will see. But let me just see. Just show you this. So it does cut paper, it's just that this paper is not very stable, but this does its job. And again, if you do your job practicing with these tools, they would do their job. All right, let's move on to the next grind. All right, so let's move on to the next grind, which is the Sabre grind. But it's also known, you may hear that it's also called a V grind or a high flat grind. Now let's look at the geometry of this edge. if you notice, you have a flat grind to here, then you have an angle change or a bevel that goes all the way to the edge. Okay, so again, the Sabre grind, you're going to have a flat grind up here. You're going to have a bevel or an angle change that goes all the way to the edge. However, on the edge, you have a micro bevel. So you have a angle change here and an angle change here. A micro bevel or a secondary bevel at the edge. Now, this knife has a stronger edge than a full flat grind or hollow grind. A stronger edge than a hollow grind or a full flat grind. Again, I've never used a full flat grind. I am aware of them, but I only want to speak on what I have experienced with. So now the thing about this, it's very easy to sharpen because you have this angle change here and you have a bevel, micro bevel change here. So that makes it very easy to sharpen, and it is a good balance for slicing and durability. So you can slice with this pretty well, and it's very durable. Now, the thing about the Sabre grind, it's used, one thing, it's very, very beefy, you know, so with it being beefy, it's not the best slicer, but because of the heavier blade. This knife is basically for tactical, bushcraft, and survival. Again, tactical, bushcrafting, and survival. So it's basically an all in general. You can chop with this blade, with this edge. You can split wood. You can carve, but not as well as with a Scandinavian or hollow grind. You can carve. You can slice. You can use it for tactical, bushcrafting, and survival. So this is the Sabre grind. Also, you may hear it called a V grind, because if you look at it, let's see, it somewhat does look like a V from here going up. Let's see if you can, oh no, but it, or you can look at it as a high flat grind. Flat grind here, bevel change, another bevel change, or a micro bevel, or a double bevel. But this is the cutting edge here. Again, the Sabre grind is a all-around knife. Now let's move on to the hollow grind. All right, this next blade edge is the hollow grind. Can you figure out why they call this a hollow grind? Let me know in the comments. Well, first of all, one distinct thing about the hollow grind is that the blade is a concaved inward. If you look at this portion here, part of this knife, of this blade, has been ground out to make it concave. And this is again known as a hollow grind. Just think if someone scooped out some metal, think of a V or a U. Someone just scooped out some metal here and made this concave. Now this hollow grind is extremely sharp. It is great for slicing. It cuts with very little resistance. So let me show you that. Again, this hollow grind, they're very sharp. Take your 2 fingers. So, again, they're very sharp. They cut with little resistance. And again, metal or steel has been ground out here in the middle. That is known as concave. Now, the thing about this, the edge can become weak. It can be chipped, or it can become dull easily under heavy use. It's somewhat hard to sharpen because you only sharpen this very, very small edge here. But once you learn how to sharpen it, you can sharpen this by feel. I usually use a whetstone or a ceramic rod. Sharpening is another altogether different thing. But this is, think of this as a straight razor or a hunting knife, or this edge is more or less an everyday carry. Many pocket knives have a hollow grind, or you can say a concave grind, because again, metal has been ground out right here, leaving a very, very sharp edge. So that is the hollow grind blade. Let's take a look at what I think is the sharpest next, is the Scandinavian grind. All right, guys, I think this grind is the favorite of bushcrafters. Scandinavian grind, the bushcrafter's knife. What distinguishes this so much? If you look at the geometry here, starting here, you have a flat grind that starts here and it goes very low, and it goes directly, when the bevel changes, it goes directly to the edge with no secondary bevel. This goes directly to a 0 degrees. Now, this is very easy to sharpen. You just follow the bevel. You put this on your strap or whatever. For example, you would just put this, you can feel it, and it's right there, and you would just pull this way. You would just pull back. So it's very easy to sharpen, and it's excellent for woodworking and bushcrafting. When you want to make notches or do some carving, or even if you have to make if you're making a bow drill or something of that nature, this is the go-to knife. Very strong, and it has a very durable edge. And again, this is it's very sharp because of its edge. Scandinavian grind. Slices like butter. Also, you may hear it called Scandi. But one thing about it though, it's really not great for slicing food or thin material, because you have this 0 degrees, and if you're slicing, unlike the hollow grind that is concave, the material will just become wedged right in here. And this may you can wedge this in cuts due to its steep angle. It has a very steep angle. So, but when you wedge it into some wood, that's great for making feather sticks. So, and this knife simply is basically for bushcrafters, campers that do carving. So when I go into the bush, as a practice, I will bring an axe or hatchet that has a convex grind. I will bring a belt knife that usually has a saber grind, but I have belt knives that have a mixture of a saber grind in one portion, a flat grind in one portion, or a hollow grind in another portion. And I will always bring a Scandinavian grind knife with me. I may not use all of them, but each time I go into the bush, I know I'm going to practice. So I want to practice with a convex grind, also known as an axe grind, a saber grind that's also known as a V grind or high flat V grind, a hollow grind, which its proper name is a concave grind, and a Scandinavian grind. You will all hear a lot of times Scandi. So guys, again, when it comes to bushcrafting, yes, a lot of people say, I've heard, a knife is a knife. What I can do with an axe, I somewhat can do with a Scandinavian grind as well. Each and every grind will cut, but what grind will you use for the task at hand? I have made feather sticks with an axe or hatchet using a convex grind. I've made feather sticks with a saber grind, hollow grind, but they always come up much better with a Scandinavian grind, because this is one of the purposes of this edge. Sure, you can chop with the saber grind, but you can always chop much better with the convex grind. I can slice with this convex grind as well as this Scandi grind, as well as this saber grind. But slicing would be much better using a hollow grind for field dressing an animal, for cutting your vegetables, for carving. So it depends on you, what works for you, but whatever task that I'm doing in the bush, I think it's great to use the proper tool. What is the proper tool? That's what you determine. So guys, I hope this has been informal. Just remember, I encourage you, as a bushcrafter, camper, hunter, anything to do with outdoors, learn the use of a convex grind, the use of a saber grind, the use of a hollow grind, and the use of a Scandinavian grind. And also again, there's a full flat grind. I've heard about that. I've never used it. There's a chisel grind. I've heard about it. I know a little about it, but I've never used it. The main thing is just to get out in the bush, enjoy Mother Nature, and practice with your tools. With that said, guys, I hope this has been beneficial. And remember, hit that like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Virginia Bushcrafter. I will see you in the bush. Stay safe, everyone.